Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about collections. Collections are really just containers that you can put data in and retrieve from whenever you need. There are several different types of collections that we can use, but in this video, I'm only going to focus on two, the most popular collections that you're going to use and probably the easiest as well. These two collections are called an array and a list. Creating an array is quite similar to creating a variable. We start with our data type, but before we put a name for our variable, we have to put two square brackets. Now we can name it something like numArray, and we'll set this equal to an array of numbers. And to do that, we'll use curly brackets, and then we can put in some numbers separated by commas. And of course, we end with a semicolon. We could, of course, create other types of arrays like string arrays. So here we have an array of strings. To access any of the elements inside of an array, we use its index number. Arrays in C# and most programming languages use what's called a zero-based index. Let's take our int array as an example that had the integers 2, 4, 6, and 8 inside of it. The first element in the array has a value of 2. That's the first element that we stored. However, it has an index of 0. It begins at 0 when we count. So the first element has an index of 0. And this, of course, goes on. The second element has a value of 4 and has an index of 1. So on and so forth. And you can see a simple formula to remember this is that the index is equal to n minus 1, where n equals the length of the array, or the number of elements inside. Now that we know how zero-based indexing works, let's try to actually retrieve some of the data from these arrays. So I'll come down here, and I'll type console.writeLine. And to get an element from an array, we simply use the variable name of the array, and we use those square brackets again, and we put the index of the element that we want in the array. So remember, index 0 will be the first element in the array. So when I run this program, it should print the value of 2. And there you go. And of course, if I change this to 1, it'll be 4. If I change this to 2, 6, 3, 8. The string array works exactly the same. If I just change this to string array, it'll return the first element in the array, which is index 0, and the value is Bill. So if we run, it prints Bill. If I try to access an element in an array with an index that doesn't exist, like say 9, and run the program, I'll get an index out of range exception. Index was outside the bounds of the array. So the program won't even run if you put in an invalid number here. Again, arrays are great when you already know how many elements you need to put inside of it. But if you need something a little more dynamic, this is where you're going to use a list. So to create a list, we type list and then angle brackets instead of square brackets. Now these are made by holding the shift key and pressing the comma and period keys. Inside of these angle brackets, we're going to choose the data type that we want to create the list of. So in this case, we'll choose int. And let's call this something like numList. This is just the name of our list variable, and we set it equal to, now this is a little bit different than when we did the array. We have to set this equal to a new list int, and then put parentheses. Now we can put our curly brackets, and we can put numbers. Let's use odd numbers this time, and then close it off. Okay, so this new keyword here, no pun intended, is something that we're going to talk about a lot more in depth later on. For now, just know that when you create a list, you have to set it equal to a new list. And you also have to use these angle brackets with the data type that you want to create the list of. Now, when we do this, we can access our elements in the same way with the index, just like this, but we can do other things as well. So we can also add and remove elements. So to do so, you take the variable name of your list and then you press dot add. Now you can put a new int item, and you can see here it tells me it wants an integer in these parentheses. It's looking for an integer. The list is integer. We can add only an integer. If I try to put anything else, it's going to give me an error that this is not an integer. So let's add another number, 11. So this now has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements into it. So I should be able to print element 5, which has a value of 11 at index 4. So let's try that now. And there you go. So I was able to add to this list of numbers. I can also remove. And here we would put the actual item that we want to remove. So in this case, the actual integer. So we want to remove 9. Okay? So now we're going to have the elements 3, 5, 7, and 11. If I run it now, I should get an error. As it's out of range, there is no index 4, or there is no element at index 4. And if we go to index 3, instead of 9, it should show 11, because we added 11 and then removed 9. And there it is. If you wanted to, you could still remove something from the list by its index. Simply use the list variable and do dot remove at instead of remove, and this will take an index. So I can remove at index 0, and this should remove number 3. So if I go and get the element at index 0 now, you'll see that I actually get 5 to return. There you go. Alright, so one more thing I wanted to show you guys was that you can actually get how many elements are in an array or a list very easily. So to get the amount of elements in an array, we'd put in the name of our array, and dot, we can say dot length, and this is going to show us how many items are in the array. And it shows 4. For a list, it's basically the same thing, but what you're going to do is do num list, but instead of length, you're going to use count. Just a little bit of a quirk. One is length and one is count, but you always have IntelliSense there to back you up. Alright, so that's about it for this video. Like I said, there are several other collections, and maybe we'll talk about a few of them later on, especially dictionaries. But for now, this is a great start. We'll be back with the next video pretty soon, so we'll see you then.